The big three of sports writing and another guy.
I resemble that remark.
Today, the kick, the cup, the kiss, the party, the plan, the Cuban beef, and the good, the bad, and the next big three.
Don't go there.
10 topics, one winner.
Get away
Let's do
from
this.
Woody Page.
Don't do that.
Lee Denver. Get out of Page Denver, baby. Go.
It's
Not
Around
mellow,
the
no
Horn,
mellow.
the show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reali.
That's right.
That is right. Welcome back to the Horn. Welcome back to the show that scores the argument. Welcome back, Woody Page.
Let's get right out in front of it. In 2014 in Brazil, the Brazilians will be playing their agogos. That's clicking together cowbells. Get
Tim
ready.
Kalishaw.
Will Joel Rifkin please report to the stadium office? Joel Rifkin.
Mariotti.
All the octopus here, small scale version, says, I'm going to win.
Blackstone.
I still can't believe we have to wait 4 more years for the next World Cup.
Anybody else get Kalishaw's
Yes,
reference,
we all
Seinfeld's
got it.
reference? Very good. Let's go to work.
It's the first word.
All right. How much would you give to be in Barcelona right now, eating tapas, reclining with a Castilian lisp, drinking sangria with 2 million of your drunk,
Stop it.
shirtless, best friends going on an hour 24 of celebration? Spain's first World Cup, despite all the yellows, despite this Mortal Kombat finishing move,
Lord.
despite the boatload of blown opportunities, this, by everyone's estimation, not a beautiful game, but was it a satisfying finish to you, Kevin Blackstone?
Well, the very end of it was very satisfying. I mean, a goal in a 116-minute mark to save us from sending this into a shootout situation. Thank goodness it did that. But after all that went on in this tournament, after the fantastic backdrop of South Africa, which made this so different than anything else we'd ever seen, and some of the colorful players and some of the other games that we saw that were pretty exciting, this was not very good. The Dutch came up and mucked up the works from the very beginning. The place was raining with yellow cards, mostly on them, all well-deserved. Probably should have been another red card in there somewhere. They certainly did not endear themselves to people who love the beautiful game, or even, I think, the casual viewer who was watching this, because it just took the excitement out of the game. So that was very, very unfortunate.
What do you think, Mariotti?
Well, the good news, 700 million people most ever watched this, Tony, including the most ever in the United States. But Kevin is right. That was not an aesthetic, appetizing game yesterday because the Dutch mucked it up. They are lucky they didn't have a couple of red cards, the one you just showed, Reali. I mean, why wasn't that guy thrown out of the game? I mean, the referee, they're actually criticizing him because he was being over-officious. He was being under-officious when it came to the Dutch, and it's a shame because all in all, this World Cup, Kevin's right, he was there. South Africa did a wonderful job considering everybody thought there was going to be a lot of violence and transportation problems and a big train wreck. They did a beautiful job. The pictures coming out of there yesterday were gorgeous. It's just a shame the games didn't live up to the host of the
Well,
tournament.
for my Dutch orange yesterday, it was all yellow. But, you know, as physical as they were, as these guys are talking about, you know, Spain did a great job of diving and imitating the Italian team to embellish some of those calls. It could have, you know, it didn't have to be like that. I agree the best team won, but the problem with the best team winning is that Spain's style is just they're so impenetrable on defense. There's not a lot that happens in a lot of their games. This wasn't their only game that was like that. And you know, that doesn't make for the greatest viewing in the world.
Page.
Well, Tim, you're talking about style points. I'm talking about victory. They won. It's all about winning the World Cup. And yes, there were some marred moments. The lack of instant replay, the decisions by the referees, low scoring, the wacky ball from Walgreens, all of those, but there wasn't, as Jay pointed out, there wasn't any incidents of violence. There was controlled crowds. We had that flight of the Bumblebee for 2.5, 3 weeks that I didn't like, but the game was satisfying. You had a goaltender that proved to be the best in the world in Casillas, 4 consecutive shutouts, 5 overall in the tournament. You had a team that played great, dominant defense, controlled against the Netherlands 59 of the time.
So you
they
feel
had
the
a
best
chance to
team
win.
won, and that's all that really matters
course,
in the end.
The satisfaction of having been the only panelist to pick Spain.
Oh, that's
the
what it
entire
came
game.
down to. You want your
picked them.
points. I think
picked
Blackistone
them
did as
too.
well.
That's right. Look it up. Hey, I will say this, though, and I know soccer aficionados hate to hear us complain about the lack of scoring in soccer, but this is a trend that's been going on too long now. Down and down and down, the scoring's been going in the World Cup.
So how
8
do you
goals.
fix this, Kevin Blackistone?
Well,
since you want to
you know,
seemingly
one
fix
way
this?
I would do it is you got to do something about all these guys faking these fouls that draw yellow cards on great players like Kaká and cost them games. That's one thing you got to
Mariotti,
crack
how do you
down
This
on.
is
fix
the
this?
grandest event in sports. How about spending the next 4 years instituting replays so we don't have those debacles?
Kalisha.
2 or 3
How
of
about
them as we did.
loosening the offsides rules,
Ooh, I
not
like
getting rid
that.
of it, give more scoring chances.
Yeah.
Paige.
And every time there's a yellow card, you have to play without that player for 2.5 minutes, like we see
2.5
in
minutes.
hockey.
Are you saying
I've
the
said
puck-
this
is like-
before. There is nothing you people like more than fixing a game you know next to nothing about.
That's what we do.
Basketball now. Let's move on. The Three Kings party Friday night. Yes, they did. The T word, tampering, thrown around by Mark Cuban. Jesse Jackson likened Dan Gilbert to a slave owner, and it looks like Derek Fisher will stay with the Lakers, saying no to the Heat. About the tampering, do you think Cuban's got beef, Woody Page?
No, not at all. If they want to investigate, I'm all for them. But when you are a free agent, they are allowed to go out. They can talk to each other. There's nothing in the NBA regulations about players colluding, if you will, because they're not representing a team, they're representing themselves. Kurt Flood fought for this for a long time ago. I don't agree with Reverend Jackson's statements about slavery, but when he says that Dan Gilbert owns the team, not the player, he's absolutely right. If Dan Gilbert wanted LeBron back, he should have spent more money on other players. He should have spent more time with LeBron James, extending his contract another 10 or 12 years to ensure he was there. So I don't think
Can't
that
really
there's
do that.
anything the NBA could do, should do, or even would think about doing.
Kalisha?
Yeah, I got to agree. I'm surprised that Cuban, who fancies himself a player's guy and a player's coach, would come out and say he thinks there's something wrong with players just discussing where they're going to go and actually ending up on the same team. That's far different from owners who have the power to collude, to tamper. We've seen it in baseball. We've seen the fines. They can restrict markets. They can change everything. Players being able to talk to each other and decide they want to play together, that should be a freedom that everybody should embrace.
No, after July the 1st, I agree with you. But before then, they have an allegiance to their teams, especially LeBron James, who's being accused by his owner, former owner, Dan Gilbert, of quitting on games. 4 different games in the Boston series. If that is the case, guys, and if indeed Chris Bosh, who said Friday, this has been in the works for months, if that's true and LeBron had it in his mind he was leaving Cleveland, to me, that's a breach of integrity that the NBA should be investigating. And I expect Mark Cuban to be very loud about this. And I expect David Stern to be very loud
And I
about this.
expect
And
Jay
don't be
Mariotti to be very
surprised
loud about
if there is an investigation.
Yeah, well, you know what? As much as a maverick owner, and no pun intended, Mark Cuban has been in this league, at the end of the day, his job is to be an owner. And what LeBron James has done here in terms of his real legacy is he's changed the game in terms of how owners are relating to elite players. This isn't a Kurt Flood deal. This is for the elite of the game. And all of a sudden now, it is the elite players in the game that are calling the shots about where they're going to go and where they're going to play, and not the owners and the GMs. And I think that is what Mark Cuban is reacting to.
You have any thoughts on Jesse Jackson's comments, Kevin?
I do. I mean, I think he was channeling the great book that Bill Rhoden wrote just a few years ago, $40 Million Slave, talking about the historical relationship between owners and how they seem to think that they can own players, particularly African-American players, and how African-American players haven't fought back against that. And his words, Gilbert's words, were very crass and really set him up to look like he was mad that someone had left his camp.
Kevin, I'm sorry. I cannot use the word slave when LeBron James is making well over $100 million in endorsements. He just signed for $100 million. He's going to be the next billion-dollar athlete, and he's a slave? No.
Kalisha.
I got to agree. When an owner is offering him $120 million to stay and then he's just angry about it, those are two different things. That's not runaway.
Woody Page, last
Well,
word to
I'm
you.
more concerned about what Dan Gilbert said and what Mariotti just kind of echoed. There's no way he quit on the team. If he was going to want to leave there,
Did you
he
see
would have
Game
wanted
5?
to go out with a championship,
Did you
Jay.
see Game
Not
5?
with quitting in a game.
And Woody, I think he quit.
We've been horned. We're going to take a quit right now.